Warhammer Skull Session. I'm Rob, your host, and I'm joined today with my co-host and dear friend, Mason. How's it going, Mason?
Going well, Rob.
That's awesome. Today we're going to talk about, 40k versus Age of Sigmar.
The battle for the ages.
Yeah, we'll see which one we think is better, which one you think is better. You could always leave a comment down below. But before we get into our main topic, let's talk a little bit about our hobby progress. What's on your bench there?
So I finished my Stormcast Eternals army. Got the bases in for the pieces I painted up a couple weeks ago. So nice. Those are based and in the case. So I have now officially done my Stormcast, which is nice.
Cheers. And
have been working on my Enforcers for Necromunda. I've started on the Subjugators, starting on the first batch of 4. Mostly I do them in 4 because painting yellow takes a long time.
Yeah.
And so I've been working on that. We shot a battle report with Rob last week.
Yo!
That should be going up soon.
Age of Sigmar battle report. That's right. It's actually going to come up next Thursday.
Yep. Or would it be...
This Thursday. This already came out. Check our latest video.
Yeah. So we're shooting this on a Monday.
Yeah.
So this will drop on a Saturday. The battle report will drop on a Thursday.
And the reason why that funky timeline is because we're going to try to get a 40k battle report in as well. Just crushing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hopefully I'll be more conscious for that one.
Yeah. That was a bit of a
only
marathon.
4 hours and 3 hours sleeps for the AOS one. So,
and I think this one,
hopefully not this one.
I'm thinking this one is going to go a lot smoother because now we kind of have an idea of what we want to do, camera angles at least, and you say really get a plan forward, know exactly what equipment to get out to record, and I'll have it out and ready. So I think we're going to jump in. It's going to be a lot shorter for this battle report. Alrighty. So my hobby progress. I finally edited a video for this Nigel Stormcaller that I finished painting, and it is a fine cast model. And you know how much I detest fine cast models. And the reason why I detest fine cast models is because, there's several reasons. The way they inject the molding makes it really difficult to take off the sprue, and then you'll have some sculpting that you're gonna have to do with your X-Acto blade because the contact points are just so skewed, and they put them on, really fine detail. So you'll obscure it if you just try to scrape it off. Also, a lot of it's really hard to build in subassembly. So what I did was I put a lot of pre-shading and a lot of glazing with my brush. A friend told me the other day I don't put enough brush work in. Well, this is like 99% brush work. The undershading is with the airbrush, but everything else was brush work. So there you go. I do it. It just takes a lot longer to do than if I just spray it with an airbrush. So there you go. I have that in, and then the video should be dropping soonish. I don't know what the timeline of that video is. Speaking of video editing, I've done, and I'm just reaching September with videos done. And I'm going to push that. So from here until September, I have videos already pre-done. They're going to come up. And the reason why I'm trying to get a real jump on this is because I am a teacher. And here in my state of Maryland, we teachers are going back to the building and recording live sessions. Well, not recording. Recording. We're doing live sessions to our classrooms, but we're going to be in the school building. So I'm not going to be here at home where I can produce a video and then discuss it and then, comment from my computer, eliminating the travel time from school to my job and back, which used to be hobby time. Travel time became hobby time. So I'm going to be losing on some of that. So I want to be prepared and getting a whole bunch of videos in advance. So this way I'll have the content continuously rolling. I suspect the live sessions here are still going to be once a week because of all the news. So you have to be current with that. But As far as tutorials and other things, I would like to have a lot of those pre-recorded for as much as I possibly can while I still have time this summer, which I'm writing curriculum for my district this summer. But that has nothing to do with the hobby, darn it. That was a tangent. Sorry. All right. So back to the hobby progress. We probably just lost all our viewers. Back to the hobby progress. Logan Grimnar.
The work rant with Rob.
I mean, it wasn't really a rant. I'm fine with it. It's just things are changing. Channel update. That's what it was. Boom.
Okay.
All right. There you go. I related it. All right. Here is the sled for Logan Grimnar, which actually has a lot of detail to it. It's actually pretty decent. I mean, a lot of people have Santa and reindeer, and I know all the memes. But I'm gonna paint it up. I'm gonna have some fun with the chapter master before he passes through the Rubicon Primaris, and I'll never use him again, so it'll be more of a display piece and whatever, nostalgic, maybe Legends army. So we're starting with that. Oh,
that or they kill him off.
What's that?
That or they kill him off. So he can't fail crossing the Rubicon.
Yeah, but it's Logan Grimnar. He's just BA. He's not going to fail. I mean, if the one young Wolf Lord can do it, and I'm sure, it'd be fun to see Crom Dragon Gaze do it. That'd be fun. I am not crossing over. Like, okay, then stay mini. He will not be faster than me. I am crossing over because I decided that. Love Crom Dragon Gaze. All right. So that is it for my hobby progress. Not much, a lot of video editing. There it is. And now I guess we can go on to what's new in the Warhammer community, unless you have something, Mason.
Nope, I got nothing on my head.
I have this on my head. Does that work? Swoosh. All right, there you go. We're on a crusade. All right, let's get into crusade. Now, at first, I thought these were mini games, like in a kill team session, but this is not mini games at all. Because per our last show, we discussed that there's quite a bit of models in there, and crusade it's more of a campaign mode. That's all it is, just campaign mode. And I'm excited to start. I actually picked up the journal. So I ordered the journal, and that's coming in. So I'm excited about that. And I'm really excited about getting missions with the gaming group. It's been a lot of years in the making to get a lot of cool people to play 40k with. All right, so preparing for battle, what we have here, and this is continuing the story from the last 3 that we reviewed. You have the Canoness, Ava Pureheart, all right, and the Missionary Gravel Redeemed. That's pretty good. Battle Sister Squad. I think it's so much fun. We're gonna have so much fun with this because it's pretty cool. I wonder if they're going to make if somebody keeps winning battles because their army is more tailored to the scenarios, will people gonna get left behind in our campaign? So let's say if I keep on losing missions and let's say Mason here wins them all, my army is going to be significantly weaker because you get a lot of benefits. So I was wondering if they will balance that out. You see over here, the Retributor Squad Sen has battle honors, which is grizzled, ignore wounds on a roll of 6 up. So, yeah.
I'm guessing there's probably a cap on how many abilities you can get, and that from what I remember seeing of the rules, even if you lose, you still get points to put in battle honors.
Right.
So I'm guessing yes, if you win more games, you will obviously be stronger, but it's not like you can over buff a unit or something.
So over here, the Chaos Marines, you get to see all the battle honors here, where the Canoness over there, the Adepti Sororitas only had 1 battle honors. The Demon Prince has a battle armor. The The Ebon Guard has battle honors. The Crimson Horde has battle honors. Ajax Slaughterkin has battle honors, and Talons of the Harkin Raptors have battle honors as well. So the Chaos is really stacked.
But do they all have one battle honor, or do some of them have multiple battle honors?
They all have one battle armor.
Okay.
Just multiple units have different battle.
It's not like you can have, say, your Demon Prince have like 4 or 5 battle honors.
Right.
Which I think that will make it a little more balanced in that you can't min-max abilities and just trick out a character or a unit to be just totally broken.
This is interesting. The Crusade Blessings. It says Crusade Blessings. Both players add up Crusade points of all units on their army roster. The player with the lowest total gains a number of bonus command points equal to half the difference. So even if you are falling behind, there's an opportunity to get some kind of advantage.
Yeah, that's a decent advantage. I think it will benefit certain armies more than others if you have the stratagems to use those command points on.
Right.
Because it's always better to use stratagems than it is to use the base spend a command point to just reroll something.
Yeah.
So if you're getting more, you kind of want something that takes advantage of that. So that might be something to think about when you're building your army, but it's nice that they give you some advantage.
Yeah, it really is. This is the Crusade Mission Incursion, the Relic, which is interesting. So you have the Relic, which has a bubble of 6 inches, I guess, and that's if you're within 6 inches of the Relic. I guess you can control that or be able to take that relic with you. It's actually action is called Carry Relic. One infantry unit from your army can start to perform the action at the end of the movement phase if it is within 1 inch of the relic objective marker. And the action is completed at the end of your turn so long as the unit performing it is still within 1 inch of the objective marker and there are no enemy units, excluding aircraft, in the engagement range of it. If this action is successfully completed, remove the objective marker from the battlefield and select one model in that unit. It is carrying the relic. I would think that it's sort of like, have you ever played the game Bacon? I know that's an old school game when I was in Catholic school in New York, where they took this plastic bowling pin, I guess, and they put it in the middle of a basketball court, and you have 2 people on each side, and the objective is you need to take the bowling pin and run it over back to your side. It just reminds me of that. I don't know. I am so old school.
Well, this is a position that's been around in 40k, and I think it's also in AOS for a while. The mission. So it's kind of it's just I think I don't know if they've changed anything about it, but it's just a version of that.
Okay.
It's kind of like a capture the flag sort of thing.
Oh, okay. So it's not Bacon. All right. Well, let's see. I haven't been around the games long enough to see that mission, but
I've never played it. I've just heard about it being played in competitive sense. So.
Interesting. So, no mercy, no respite. Cull the Hordes. Keep a Cull the Hordes tally for each unit from your army. Add 1 to unit's Cull the Hordes tally each time it destroys 6 or more models in the same phase. Each unit gains a number of experience points equal to the Cull the Hordes tally. So you're getting experience points. Also, it says newly sized units are survivable, offered to the Grizzle Battle Honor. We also choose the Survivor and apply the Retribution. Okay, that's just their game there. Battlefield Supremacy Survivor. At the start of your command phase, select 1 unit from your army. It gains 2 experience points after the battle if it is not destroyed at the end of the battle, and in addition 2 bonus experience points if it is below half strength. And there's that half strength. That's where it's going to be really important.
Yeah.
units have only a single model instead gain these bonus experience points if at the end of the battle the number of wounds that model has remaining is at least half their wounds characteristics. So he's a survivor, or she's a survivor. And here is some of the lore behind the actual battle, the Battle of St. Augustina's Tomb. Excellent artwork. I'm not going to go and read that, but you can. All right, Mastercrafted Armor. If the model saves characteristic is improved by 1. In addition, roll 1d6 each time a character suffers a mortal wound, and that's on a 6. The wound is ignored. Oh, there you go.
So does it say armor save or model save?
Models save characteristic.
Okay, that's going to be FAQ'd probably.
Oh yeah,
because it's the same wording that happened with the blade guard, where it says, "Well, the model saves improved. We'll have an invul save."
Oh yeah,
improved it to a 2-up.
Right.
Because of my armor, which makes no sense. So I'm guessing it's going to, like, they're going to say, oh, what we mean is your armor saves improved by 1, because that's what Mastercrafted Armor used to do.
Right.
But it just was one thing when I heard it that made me think of, oh, that's something that if you for some reason have a jerk playing the Crusade system, that's something that they could be a jerk about, but hopefully people playing the Crusade system wouldn't be that way.
Only time will tell. It all depends on the community, right?
Yep.
All right, so we're on a Crusade Part 5. Hey, more stuff. Love that. Wow, that's an epic battlefield. It really is. So they're playing through again. There is the Paragons of Piety, their power ratings. Oh boy. Your Crusade points. Running total. I see here it says Super Imperial Knight. They allied an Imperial Knight. Super Heavy Auxiliary Detachment command cost 3 command points. Restrictions, none. Command benefits, none. Lord of War, 1. Oh boy. Hey, I would love to throw in a Knight Titan into the mix. That's fun. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if under the current rules that breaks your Battle Forged bonus still.
Right.
Current rules, because that was the big thing, is that if you put in a Knight Titan with like a Marine army, you were no longer Battle Forged, and you lost all your like chapter traits and stuff.
Oh wow, that stinks.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's going to change in this upcoming edition, but that's how it was, how it changed in 8th, and that's why I would never use my Knight.
Right, I want to be able to use my Knight. I just really would. That would be fun. I took a while painting it. I should be able to use it. You and I should play a game, Mason, where our knights cannot attack anything else but each other, and they can duke it out.
That'd be fun.
Right? I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, this is not a competitive scenario, so why not? Alrighty, awesome. Let's get into something for Warhammer Underworld. All right. I like Warhammer Underworld. I think it's the first Warhammer game that I actually completely, for the most part, understood the rules, where I didn't have to look in the rule book every time I played it. So it just has a special place in my heart. Plus, I have 3 seasons worth and plenty of warbands that I just painted up in case somebody wants to play. But if you don't have anyone to play with, GW released a solo play challenge for Warhammer Underworld, called a Crushing Terror. And I think this is really, really interesting, that if you can't get anyone to play with, especially with COVID and all the things that are happening, that you could still have fun with your miniatures by playing Warhammer Underworlds. Okay, the objective, to defeat the Formid Crusher. So you need a Formid Crusher in order to play this game, and that is the victory condition. Alrighty, so I love the way it plays through. So playing the game, use the game sequence presented on rule page 18. Treat the Formid Crusher as always takes the first activation in each round, and keep track of the Formid Crusher's action by using a separate set of activation tokens. If the Formid Crusher is out of action at the beginning of the end phase, then the game ends immediately. So that's interesting. Yeah, because if you ever played Warhammer Underworlds, you're taking turns, and once you're done, you have like 4 turns. And if you're done with the first turn and you moved and you attacked and you have no longer moves, everybody else gets to, like your opponent gets to move all their miniatures and do actions with all their miniatures while you just pretty much stand there. Now you could put your miniature on guard to try to deflect some of the blows that are definitely coming your way, because you can't attack back at that point until the next round. So it's interesting how they set the rules like that. The Formid Crusher cannot be given move or charge tokens, so they can't move or charge, and it's just going on a set path and doing its own thing. So it's not playing exactly like Warhammer Underworlds, so they have their own kind of priority. It's just playing more like a I guess more like a role-playing game, and they give you the card update for the Formid Crusher, both inspired and regular version, where it has the number of moves and wounds. Both get increased. Moves, wounds, and protection dice all get increased when it becomes inspired. So yeah, it's just a fun little thing. I'm really glad they're doing this, and I wish they would continue to do this until I can convince my gaming group to play some Warhammer Underworlds. Or they convince me to play Necromunda. I don't know, one or the other. Anywho.
Yeah, I think it's very much, it's similar to what they did with like the Crystal Tower,
yeah,
the Silver Tower, and like Blackstone Fortress, where there are rules in place that allow you to play the game solo.
Mm-hmm.
And just AI it. So I think it's interesting they did that with Underworlds. I think if they want to, I feel like it should be something they maybe should add on to going forward, because I could see that if someone plays that little scenario enough, it may just get stale.
Oh yeah.
Or you figure out how they're like the AI of the Crusher is broken, and then you can just easily find a way to win or something.
Right. And they did have one for a giant. I think it was last Christmas where they released it, and they released a card to play a giant. So that'd be interesting if they come up with more scenarios like this. Or maybe come up with a book, and then someone purchases the Adventures. It's called Warhammer Underworld Adventures. I mean, go ahead, GW, roll with it. There's a freebie. Alrighty, so this is going to start talking a little bit about our main topic, but not quite. It's just a segue kind of thing. It says Gaming with My Child, a really interesting article on how one person is trying to teach their child due to COVID, having this extra time, keeping his child involved, start him into the hobby, and it says a lot of different tips on how to start your child into the hobby. I thought it was interesting because in this article, it actually started him on Age of Sigmar and not 40k. I wonder if there was something behind that, but he doesn't really mention the decision. It could have been that the child was more interested in fantasy than in sci-fi, or it could be that the rules were simpler to get into and easier to play. So that's the one he chose. He didn't actually expound upon that. So he says a couple of things in order to get people into playing miniatures, and it does playing our game and enjoying our hobby. And it doesn't matter if it's a child or not. These tenements are really holds true for anyone who's starting to play the game and you want to get into them. So the first thing is allow the person to paint their own models however they want, and it's okay. Don't be judgmental. Let them do it. We've all had our first model. I burnt mine. I no longer have my first model. I literally chucked it in the fryer. I said, nothing needs to see this blasphemy, this heresy, you know. Also, starting to start collecting boxes is an excellent way to go if they're interested. And if they have that hobby ADD, let them pick their own faction, no matter what it is. And then they're painting and enjoying that and starting. You can use the contrast paints. That's an easy way to do. I use glazing. I just taught my nephews how to paint, and we use the glazing pre-shading technique, and they were having fun with that as well. And, you know, when somebody paints something up, you have an investment in it, right? So you kind of like, yeah, this is mine, you know, and it just lasts with you. I remember when painting 124 scale models when I was a kid, I used to dust off those models every week. And I didn't even use them in a game or anything, but they were mine. And they weren't perfect, but they were definitely mine. So that definitely has help in order to get somebody invested into our hobby. And it came to the point where they had two forces. They actually filmed a battle report. So, right? Father and child filming a battle report. How cool is that? That's awesome. Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I would say my one rule is if I was getting my child into the hobby is I will not play you until all your models are painted. Instill that in them young.
Yeah. No gray.
Because some of my friends, their kids are out of the hobby, and it's very much becomes they build it, they start to paint, they get bored, they don't want to paint, and it suddenly becomes dad's army. And so it's like if you want to get your child into it, it's glad they're excited, but they kind of also have to like all the various aspects of the hobby, and one of them is painting.
Yep. All right, well, that is it for the news. Going back, right back there with us. I'm going to take a moment right now just to say thank you to our Patreon supporter, Mike McBroom, who actually supports us and has input on what we do in our shows when we ask your opinion. If you want some exclusivity and a shout out on the channel, consider becoming a Patreon. Link below if interested.
Or if you're just tired of hearing Mike's name.
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Bust it up there. If you're
tired of hearing the shout out only be for Mike, go on Patreon and donate.
Join us, right? Alrighty, so let's talk about Age of Sigmar versus 40k. Now, there are other miniatures game out there, but suffice to say that GW is one of the largest miniature companies in the world. So let's talk about those two things. I have experience. We just filmed that AOS battle report, but we're going to film the 40k battle report. I play both games, and which one do I think is better, and which one, Mason, which one you think is better? And that's what we're going to get into right now. So let's start off with 40k, which is, I guess, my first game that I played for Warhammer was a 40k game with my Space Wolves. And I went to a local hobby store. And for a while, that was my only experience with wargaming, period. I got some cool people who kind of showed me around when I went to the gaming store and I was playing. But it was pretty quickly when I realized that every time I took my miniatures to the gaming store, I was utterly crushed. And it was wholly one-sided. And it was repeated. And then after a while, I felt defeated. Because I was defeated multiple times. And barely did I have a chance of getting close to winning. Love the models. Love the lore. I started reading the Space Wolf Omnibus, part of the hobby as well, and 40k related. So when it came to the book, it motivated me to continue painting and continue. I figured if I paint painted enough cool models that eventually I'll have a chance to win. I struggled with the rule set quite a bit, actually. And in 8th edition, it was the simplest rule set I think they ever had. And I was still struggling with the rule set. And, well, let me put this in perspective from my aspect as a newer player. I have Blood Claws. Now, you would think, okay, they're the youngins of the Space Wolves. They have a pistol and a chainsword, but you can change those weapons. You can have one heavy weapon per 5. Okay, not crunchy at all. So I take a plasma pistol because I modeled it after the box. It was a Battle Force box. And I take one plasma pistol, and the rest of the unit has bolters and chainswords, right? So I have 3 units of Blood Claws, because that's what came in the box. So 2 units are laid out like that. They also have frack and crack grenades, but that just comes standard. And then I have a unit where one of the leader there has a power sword. I guess just in case I wanted to have one unit of 15, I would have to have somebody with a power sword to lead him. And then he has a plasma pistol, which is different from the plasma gun. And the rest of the unit has chainsaws and bolters, frack and crack grenades as well. So this is just infantry. These are just your troop choice. It should be very, really straightforward. But every time I took them to battle, I had to figure out this. There are shenanigans that happen within the Space Wolves that allow you, if you successfully charge 2 with your chainsword, attack twice. There's now bolter discipline that if you're in half range, you also get to attack twice. But looking at Battlescribe and trying to put my list together even this week, there's no plasma gun that I can take with my Blood Claws anymore, and I wasn't realized that actually changed. It's still in the codex. So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, so how many dice do I roll? What am I hitting on? What am I wounding on? Okay, toughness, strength, and it just feels like I was doing, quantum physics to get my infantry to just mainly miss, because, bolt pistols, you really don't, from my experience, very rarely do they actually hit. I'm always attacking really tough units, I think. So it's like there was a lot of work with very, very little benefit to it. And it's just line troops. And it confused the life out of me when I started. And even now, I have to think about it. I'm like, oh, wait, how many do I reroll? Do I rolling them together? Am I rolling them separately? Can't roll them separately. People get upset when you roll separately. So from my experience with 40k, as far as the rules and getting in as a new player, I was way in. It was way over my head. Like, I was just trying to wrap my mind around it. And then I was really worried about this one thing. All right, so I'm trying to figure everything out. And people usually want to leave after 4 hours. But I couldn't wrap my head around things. Like, once, it takes me a while, but once I wrap my head around the rule set, I got it for life. But it's that first conception, and I don't want to slow play people. So now I'm feeling worried that I'm slow playing people. I'm trying to figure out the rules. I'm not even talking about the command abilities and everything else you can do with shenanigans. It just seems so crunchy for me, especially when I'm starting out. So that was 40k for me in a nutshell. Like, I put it there. There's a nutshell. There it is. So, what was your experience with 40k, and what do you think?
So, I've got into 40k 3 separate times in my life. The first time I was 12, and I got in because the models were cool, but got out because I had no idea how the rules worked. And that's mostly because when you're a 12-year-old kid trying to read that rule book, and this was like 4th edition, it was way over my head. Mm-hmm. And I had no one to explain it to me. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, yeah, I'm out. Then I got back in probably when I was around, I'd say 18, 19. Um, and this was, I think, fifth edition, fifth or sixth. And I, for me, I was getting in. I was like, okay, I'll do Tau, paint a Tau army. And one of my first games, I played a guy who was showing me the game, and what got me was he's like, okay, here's my leader. Here's all this war gear he has, but it wasn't depicted on the model. And I'm very much a believer in WYSIWYG, or at least try to WYSIWYG as much as you can. And so that really threw me off, where it was just like, you have all this stuff that, like, all these rules attached to this character. Like, he had like every piece of war gear the Tau commander could take back then. And I'm like, how am I supposed to remember all that when I can't even see it on your model? Like, he had like the honor guard gauntlet, like shields, all this stuff. And that kind of killed it for me, because I'm like, I'm trying to paint up all my stuff. And I was working like really hard, like get everything painted. And this guy's like, oh, I'm a Tau player. Ton of his stuff is just bare plastic. And I'm like, okay, that's fun. So I left then. And so then I kind of got it back fully in with a vengeance in 8th. When 8th dropped, I got the Indominus starter set and a ton of other stuff. And that's when I began my journey of painting the entire Ultramarines chapter to the man.
Wow.
I say the 2-man is tongue in cheek, but I painted a lot of Ultramarines. But I liked the rules at first, but I had a similar experience to you, where the only games I could get at the time were I was the ringer for the local tournament or the local hobby store. So whenever they had an odd number of people, I would play. And I would be playing with what I had fully painted at a time, because when I got back into this hobby long time ago, I made the promise to myself, I'm only putting models on the table that are fully painted. So I had like some squads of, like, basically it was the Indominus box set, the like getting starter for Space Marines that had TAC Marines in it, and I think another box set done. So it's like this mishmash of Primaris, TAC Marines, 2 Dreadnoughts, all this stuff. But I'm happy, because I'm like, it's fully painted, and like, I'm proud of myself, because I'm like, this is the first time I've had a fully painted 40k army in my life. Mm-hmm. And one of the first games I play is against a guy who brought the Revenant Eldar Titan, a 2 Wraith Lords, Farseer, and Dark Reapers.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, that is what I had to face with my start, like my bright-eyed and bushy-tailed list. And the entire time I'm playing, he kept on saying, oh, it's easy. Just focus all your fire at the Revenant Titan. It goes down. The thing is that it's still a Titan that has toughness 9, which I only had like 2 las cannons. Those were on my Dreadnought. And so they're winning it on 4s. Mm-hmm. Everything else that was like strength 8, whatever, is winning it on 5s. And this thing has like this auto-hitting heavy flamer that's like -4 rend, 2 damage, and it's just laying waste. I eventually bring it down, but guess what? He also still has 2 Wraith Lords and a unit of Dark Reapers that have been shooting at me this whole time.
Wow.
And it just, for me, it was a little bit like, okay, this is like, I get it was a tournament, but it wasn't like this was a major tournament. There were only like 4 people, like I think it was 5 people showed up for this tournament. So it's not like you're playing for some, like, a trophy or anything. And I was just kind of like, is this kind of what I have to, is this the only people I have to play? Is people who are going to bring either cheese or like they're this is what I'm taking to the Las Vegas Open.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll say I got out of it for a while, got into AOS, and was in AOS for a while, and we'll talk about that when we talk about AOS.
Mm-hmm.
But then got back because the group of guys at the hobby shop I started hanging out with them. They were big into 40K, and they were not I'm going to take this thing that is going to make your ancestors feel bad for you when like it's going to be like, this is just what I have painted that I thought was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And those are fun games. And it made me like 40K a lot more when you're not having to chase the like golden snitch of your competitive list.
Right.
I like 40K, but I get a lot of people's criticisms with it because it's the problem is it's a game that's been going on for so long, and some of the problems with it haven't been addressed and kind of have just gone to fester and grow and have it. I can see why it's a hard game for like you, where you're playing competitive people and you're just getting in. You're like, I've just spent all my time painting all these blood claws.
Yeah.
And the guy comes, he's like, yeah, I'm playing my 3-night list. How many games have you played, Rob? Well, this is my first game. Okay, we'll have fun. Someone's gonna have fun, and it ain't gonna be you.
I think my first game of 8th edition, I faced off against my blood claws running up the field against 20 hellblasters. That was fun. That was like, goodbye. It's like, doesn't anybody survive? No, we have 20 billion attacks. I'm like, wait, hold on. I need to buy more dice so I can roll this.
Yeah, it's either that or it's like I think it was like in that same turn I played the guy with the knight, and then I played the guy who was running Grey Knights. I was like, oh, Grey Knights. But he was taking like the meta Grey Knight list at the time. And it's like, I smite you and kill a ton of your dudes with all my smites, and then I teleport a unit in, they get into close combat and slaughter you that way, and they shoot you with all this stuff, and we have the like dreadnoughts that are like forge roll that are firing autocannons and las cannons behind, and I'm just like, what? I don't at the time didn't have the budget for forge roll, so like, how am I supposed to put like it? And one of the things that showed, this is a game I didn't play in, but I watched, and it was another competitive game, and it was the guy who I faced with Grey Knights, who, in all honesty, was a good dude. He was a fun to play with, but he was facing a guy who was bringing a Chaos Army, and he had painted up. It was a 30K Chaos Army that he was fielding in 40K, and one of the units he had was a Falchion heavy tank destroyer. Now, I don't know if for the listeners who don't know that is the like a Space Marine Baneblade. It has 8 las cannons and 2 volcano cannons. And I think it also has a demolisher cannon. And the volcano cannons, I think it was 2d6 shots, strength 14, -4, 2d6 damage. And this was like only 800 points.
Wow.
So he had all this other stuff with it. And it was just like, this is something that you would see in apocalypse games, but we're seeing in a tournament list.
Now, I can see this, but at the same time, it's like, a lot of people are going to say right now, all right, Rob, Mason, this is a competitive game. You should play it with everything you got, and if it's not good, pack up your bags, paint some different minis, to work your list so this way you can come at it full speed. And what I say to that is that there are different people out there, and different people want to gain different things from this hobby. Some are into competitive mode where all they want to do is try to dominate the other player, and that I think is fine. But I really think you need to have a conversation with the person that you're playing with and say, this is my LVO list. This is my gut-wrenching, completely demolishing, smashiest list I can come up with. Or this is my I threw it together without thinking list. I just want to roll some dice and have some fun and enjoy the game together in that manner. I think that before you get into a game, you need to be really upfront and say, this is my expectation from the game, and that's the type of game I'd like to play. If you do not like to play a game like that, then I think you suggest to look for other players or maybe do something like that. I think being upfront in this hobby is essential. And the reason why I say that is because I've had all those bad experiences, but when I found this gaming group that we're in, it's different, you know, and it's fun for me because that's the type of games that I really do like to play. And I feel like I finally found a group of chilled war gamers who just want to play the game and have some fun, try different new things. Like I have Nigel Stormcaller. I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to effectively fit him in this list, but guess what? Who cares? I want to try him out on the battlefield. So let's see what he does, you know? And I could do that without being completely demolished. So I think that having that conversation up front is absolutely essential.
And I think it's this thing of, I think the problem is that it's kind of this, at least for me, at least back in where if you're going to a game store and if you don't know who you're going to play, like you're just kind of just going there and like hope for a game.
Mm-hmm. That was me.
You kind of, if you show up and if you're someone who's like this is your first game and you show up and the guy you kind of two things happen or three things. The guy shows up, you got your fresh new kind of, you don't know what you're doing list. He's bringing his hardcore tournament list.
Mm-hmm.
He stomps you into the ground. You either A, get discouraged and feel like, why do I want to play this game anymore? But you kind of keep in it just because you like the models.
Right.
Like you, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
B, you are so demoralized, you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, why do I, like, that was pointless. That was an awful experience. I'm going to sell these on eBay and go do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're like some people where you're like, okay, time to get serious. You go online, find the net list, you become a tournament gamer, and you just assume that that's how you need to introduce people into the hobby.
Right.
That you need to kind of ritualize them, is that if you're going and playing someone new, you need to bring the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, doesn't matter if someone's like, can you show my 9-year-old daughter how to play the game? You're like, well, I'm going to bring my list that if she's not ready, I'm tabling her turn 1 because that's how we play here.
Yeah.
And it's this generally where you can have casual games at the hobby store, but you don't need to come out swinging at every single person you meet.
Right.
And I think that's like a kind of a stigma across all games, is that there's this thing of, well, if it's a random person, I don't know if I'm going to like him. I don't know what he's going to bring. So I should bring my A game just right off the bat.
Right.
And it's like, it's not to say like, oh no, don't try to win. It's just maybe think about the other just, would it really kill you if you lost that one game in a casual setting?
Yeah. I mean, really, if I saw someone who had, it's like they're getting into the hobby or they just have a really weak list, and I had a pretty strong list, I would definitely scale it back so at least it could be somewhat close. Like, it'll get to turn 3. We'll get to turn 3 at the very least, you know? So, yeah, I would definitely modify my lists or even bring underpowered units or something. So this way, kind of even it up. And this way, I feel excited. Because even if I did that, like if I just completely dominated somebody, then I'm not having fun. It's like, where was the challenge in that? You know, put a handicap on yourself. See how good of a general you really are. You know.
Yeah, and just if you're a decent person, you will feel bad if you just totally stop someone, because that means that that person probably didn't have a good time.
Right.
And I more want the other player to have a good time than it is for me to win. I mean, yes, it's nice to win, but I don't want to win at the cost of someone else's happiness.
I played Monopoly with my nieces and nephews, and I said, while they were stealing 500s from the bank, I'd be like, that's okay. The guard was on their lunch break and let them take a go. You know, I mean, wow.
I think a Monopoly, just random tangent, there is a Monopoly that was announced called Monopoly Cheaters Edition. And I think it's like there's a rule in there where you can cheat, steal from the bank and all that, but you just can't get caught.
These are great values we're teaching our children. I should know better. I should know better. No, but it was a fun game either way. It's a game, as long as you put things in context, right? Anywho.
If context, it should be after the game. You should have like done up something that said like the IRS and sent it to your niece and nephew and say, you owe us this much in Monopoly bucks.
That's right. Go to jail, don't pass go, don't collect the $200. That's it. You're done. The IRS got you. Oh, goodness. So, I guess just start wrapping up the thoughts that we have so far as Warhammer 40k. Scenery, I personally love it. I like the aesthetic. I love the models. I love reading the books. I love the fantasy and lore behind it. And I love to just roll some dice and have some fun and not think about a competitive list. Until the moment that I'm going for a competition and then I say, okay, I have this list. I want you to test it as hard as you possibly can. Bring the worst messed up list that you could possibly do and try to wipe me off the table so I can prepare to win this tournament. So yeah, then I can see the right context for that. But normally that's not going to be me. So, and I think the biggest advice I would say to anyone is you're going to encounter the wrong players usually before you find the right players. So don't give up on 40k. It is a cool game. It's a little convoluted for me because math, and there's a lot to keep track of for me personally. But that's why I befriend people like Mason, who kind of just knows all the rules, even if they are half asleep, which is amazing.
I'm an idiot savant.
Yeah, well, maybe just the savant part. Although we are two idiots guide to 40k, so there you go. So there we go. All right. So, final thoughts on 40k before we move to AOS.
I made like a pro and con list,
okay.
And I have to say, at least for 40k, I feel like their lore is the best. There's so many lore books out there for 40k, it's not even funny. And so many series that are amazing. Gaunt's Ghost, like the Horus Heresy, Eisenhorn. Like there are so many great lore books that it's great. Also, it's the only game that you can get tanks in. I mean, I know there's steam tanks, but those I don't know if they exist anymore. The only downside with 40k is it has Finecast, which AOS does not. There's a lot more book turnover in 40k than there is AOS. Or a lot more books out. Like AOS has yet to release like a campaign book, like the Vigilus books or like the Psychic Awakening books.
No, there was a campaign box set of a Quishy, I think, and there was one. I know I've seen one. So, but that's it. Just that one.
Yeah. So, and like ever since the new edition has came out, there's not been only books that have come out have been either General's Handbooks or the or just new war tomes, battle tomes for armies. So, and that 40k has older models in it.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all the AOS line is now been modernized to a good extent. Like there is no, I mean, there are still some of the old Warhammer Fantasy models in there.
Bretonian and stuff like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but those you can't really get anymore.
Mm.
It's not like 40k where you have like these units are still in fine cast, or these units are sculpts that are 20 years old,
Mm-hmm.
which is they're working on fixing it, but it's kind of it was one of my downsides.
Mm.
So those were my thoughts.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with those. So let's talk a little bit about pros and cons of Age of Sigmar. When I started playing Age of Sigmar, which is the first. See, now 40k is the first war game, first GW war game that I've ever played. But the first models I've ever painted, however, was Age of Sigmar. It was Legions of Nagash. Is a Malignance box set that I picked up, and that was the first ones that I've done about 3 years ago here on the channel. One of my first videos was painting up that box set, and I fell in love with Nagash. The models drew me in. I always liked fantasy, so the models really drew me in. And one of the things that I liked about Age of Sigmar, just painting the models without even knowing the rule sets, was that since I used to play D&D and I used to be more of a crafting kind of DM, I said, well, I mean, you could always use skeletons in your campaign, you know? So just throw some skeletons and ghast and ghouls in there, and there you go. So that dual purpose kind of helped me out. I did like the aesthetic of it, and then I played the game. And in comparing both games, Age of Sigmar was far less convoluted with very specific rules than 40k, which made it really easy for me to wrap my head around the rule set. We filmed that battle report, and I looked at the data sheets every now and again, but I wasn't every single turn. It wasn't every single rule. It wasn't every little thing that I was doing. I kind of, after a while, said, oh, okay, here's my save. What? You have rend? Okay, so I one up the dice. There you go. End of story. And I wasn't figuring out, well, is my plasma gun really valid anymore? Or does my claws and talons, I can only use 3 fingers instead of 4 because it was modeled differently. Like it didn't get into the minutia like that. And I had a lot of fun playing Age of Sigmar. And I've only had positive experiences playing Age of Sigmar thus far. So that's my experience with Age of Sigmar and playing the game. I think it's just easier to get into from that aspect. The models are awesome, and I wish there were more books.
Yeah, I got into Age of Sigmar because I wasn't playing 40k. I was trying to get back into either it was Bolt Action or I forget what game I was getting in, and just was not having fun. But I kept seeing the local group that was playing Age of Sigmar. They were playing the game and looked like they were having a lot of fun. And I was kind of like, I've just spent 4 hours playing this one game and I am miserable. I want to play whatever they're playing that looks like they're having a good time at. So that's how I got into Age of Sigmar. And I like the game. I would argue that, yes, it is simpler rules-wise. Like, initial rules are simpler than 40k. My issue with Age of Sigmar is there are so many options now that it is like of what you can pick for. You can have what realm you can be from, what your like allegiance ability is, what relic you have, what beast mount traits you have, what prayers you have, what spells you have, what whether you have multiple items, what battalion have, like there are so many things that you can choose from, and like so many options that it is just it's impossible to keep track of because they've not, as far as I know, there are no like cards or like they have the cards that are like this is what your unit does in stats.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no card to like put by it say, okay, this is what it casts this spell, this is what casts this spell, this is what has this item, this is what has this relic, this is what has this beast trait, all that. And that would be like when we were playing our game, it reminded me because we kept on getting, I think we got it a couple times of which one of your spellcasters had what spells,
right,
and what could cast what,
mm-hmm.
and I'm like, that's it, like, and because it like on even on like their card, it's not because it comes with a spell and it says you can cast these, like it can cast 2 spells and deny 2 spells,
right.
But it doesn't say anywhere it knows a spell from this lore.
Right.
You have to have read that in the battle tome.
Mm-hmm.
Where it says, "Oh, each wizard in your army knows one of the spells from this."
Right.
And so, if I'm like a layman looking, and this is what we're looking at a thing, I'm like, okay, the Archregent knows Virile Vitality, Magic Missile, Arcane Bolt, and Mystic Shield.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until you go into the battle tome where they're like, oh, it also knows that one spell from this lore. And I'm like, yeah. So how am I supposed to remember that? And then with priests, where they're like, oh yeah, every priest knows a prayer. And that's just a keyword that I'm supposed to know, but nowhere on the card does it say the priest knows a prayer. So then I have to reference back to the book of, okay, what prayer did I want? Got to remember, okay, he knows this prayer and what it does.
Right.
And like, I don't really see that in 40k because you have all these rules, but it's kind of, you're not like your character has, well, he knows these spells, but then it also does it like it doesn't, there isn't layer upon layer of stuff.
Right.
And I think like that once you start getting into AOS, that can get kind of confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I really like the models in AOS. My thing is that there are some factions in AOS that are very limited in their range of models.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, like, if you're someone who like wants to do something different, or just like, I don't want to paint 120 ghouls. I'd like to paint maybe 40 ghouls and something else and what have you. You can't really do it with some, like, it's like Flesh Eater Chords, Volkite Berserk, like the Fire Slayers, the Crodron Overlords. Like, there's a whole, like, several factions which just don't have that great a number of units.
I mean, Flesh Eater Chords alone has 17 models. That's it.
Yeah. And it's like, and some of those it's the same kit, you just swap arms.
Yeah. Unique figures, I would say we have 4, 5 model of 6 with the Vargas Courtier, 6 models, and then the Warhammer Underworld's Warband, which was kind of new, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I don't want like Space Marine options where it's like a vast amount of stuff,
mm-hmm.
but it would be nice just to have a variety of just like some model, like units to have some variety to them, to just so that you would have more than just, it's like your troop choice is just that is one unit duplicated 3 times.
Right.
But there are some great models. I mean, like the Nighthawk is a very cool line. I mentioned KO, even though they're small. I love that look. There are just some great looking models in there.
You should start a KO army.
I'm debating it, but I mean, after seeing Vince's like GI Joe Skybase for his,
I mean,
like that's hard to top.
you're not trying to top Vince. Come on, man. I always try to be at least 4 to 5 years behind his talent curve. All right, and that's me struggling.
When I saw that, I had the GI Joe theme music playing in my head.
The real American hero. That's right. Yeah.
But it's like there with AOS, it's just and there's just so many like it. I think for me, AOS has that stigma of because it came from the old world.
Mm-hmm.
There is, I think, a good portion of people who left and are in it, maybe play it, but are still kind of like, what is my faction going to be still here in a year's time?
Right. Because Tomb Kings, you know.
Yeah, and like the like they killed Tomb Kings, they killed Bretonnians, and
Bretonnians are sort of back. They have their own battle tome.
Yeah, but their model line died.
Oh, yeah, for now.
And that's the thing where Tomb Kings, their model line died. Bretonnians, their model line died.
Mm-hmm.
All the like elves and stuff were severely reduced and then kind of
replaced
or lumped into the cities of Sigmar.
Right.
And I think for some people where it's like where say you're playing, I don't know, KO or something, is it going to be, all of a sudden I'm lumped into a codex where it's now this like dwarf combo of Fire Slayers and KO, and or something like that, where it's like, well, my uniqueness is gone because GW is like, well, we don't want to make more models for either of these, so we're just going to lump you together and here, have a new codex, a new and it kind of like, I feel like in some of the releases, I feel like the Idoneth Deepkin, which are a cool range, but I'm like, could the time building those not been put into other more established faction, like various, like they already have, like, there's like so many factions that it's like, do they need a new one?
Yeah.
And that's my like the it seems like every year there has been a new faction for AOS, and I'm afraid that just going forward, you're going to be a problem of there's going to be factions that just don't get updates for a long time.
Right.
And you're not going to get new models. You're not going to get more models. You may get like a token character model or something like once a year, but like, I mean, look what they did to Skaven.
Oh gosh.
They Skaven was cool because it was like, oh, you have all these different clans, but then they're like, okay, we're just going to divvy up all these clans, and you can't play a unified Skaven army, because even though that's how Skaven were always like in the lore, that was like Skaven's thing. Is like you'd have one general, and each of the various clans would send their own kind of bits and whatever to the general, and so it would be a mixture of the various clans. They're like, no, each clan is its separate faction.
Right.
And so it's like, so if you want to play Skaven, you either have to pick one of the 4 clans, and some of those clans only have like 5 units.
Oh yeah.
So
Pestilence comes to mind. Scryer. There's a couple of them, and yeah, Skaven. I mean, the same thing happened with Flesh Eater Courts, where we just got the Archregents this year and a new codex. That's it. That's all you get. You know, and we had a warband. There you go. We got new terrain pieces, which is cool. But here's the thing. As far as the ruse, yeah, I mean, it's not perfect. But I argue this much. How many stompy tournament people have crushed you in AOS so far since you started playing?
I've crushed someone once and been crushed one time.
How many times have you been crushed while playing 40k?
The thing is, I've played 40k a lot more than I've played AOS, so that's going to be kind of an issue because
First
I
year of playing AOS versus first year of playing
I would have
40k,
gotten
I would say.
I got crushed a lot more playing 40k than I did was playing AOS.
Right, and that was the biggest thing. I had a conversation with Vince about that too, and he was like, "Yeah, they ripped off the band-aid when they did that end times, and they like completely redid with AOS, and a lot of people. There was a mass exodus of fantasy players from AOS scene, but." He said the people that really went were mostly the competitive people who were crushing everybody and stuff. And if you were a crushy player, then the sentiment was good riddance. You know, we're starting new. We're just cool people trying to roll dice and having some fun. We're not really out to crush and dominate. I mean, unless the scenario or scene dictates that, like in an LVO or an Nova Open or something like that, and you're playing for that level. But the casual games became so much better and as a whole. And this is what I was told, not just by Vince, but by several people who told me the same. They had the same kind of sentiment with that, and that 40k, they just retained all those players. So you have that wide range of, well, you have those cool players, and then you have those dominant, like crushy players, and there's a ton of them. So the experience of most people getting in will be that they will most likely get crushed if you start 40k, more than likely than, and of course it depends, there are so many scenarios and so many variables, but on a whole, that you would get crushed more by playing 40k when you're starting out than if you would for Age of Sigmar. And what do you think about that?
So I would argue that the people who left when the end times happened, yes, maybe a majority of them were the competitive gamers. I also think, at least in my experience, although I talked to some of the guys who I've talked to who have they've also played Age of Sigmar, but aren't fans of it, is that the the fantasy lore is very good.
Mm-hmm.
Way better than what AOS is now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, that lore, what kind of like what they got them into the game in the first time, and what kept them in the game, and they felt kind of they kind of didn't, like when GW was like, okay, we're getting rid of that. I think it created some bitterness with them with Age of Sigmar, where they're like, this is not the game I fell in love with.
Right.
Their GW is telling me, oh, this is what's going to come on from fantasy, but the gameplay was different. Mm-hmm. The models were different. It had a whole different vibe. Like fantasy, I wouldn't say there were poster boys, but if you had to pick poster boys, it was the Empire, where you have just dudes, mm-hmm. these humans that
underdogs
mm-hmm. fighting this thing. Well, with AOS, you have basically fantasy Marines.
Yeah.
And you're having what were like that. Like the big thing in fantasy was Sigmar kind of was the first king of the king of the kingdom, first king in the kingdom of men, and just disappeared. Well, now in the lore, he's back. He's talking. He's like an actual person that you were discussing with, and that's kind of just. And I think for some people, where it's like it lost the kind of like somewhat of like the Tolkien kind of approachability of it, where you could pick up any kind of like 40k Warhammer fantasy novel, and it had a lot of the kind of understandable classic fantasy tropes in it, and you could have a lot of those kind of build those classic fantasy armies, where you could have the zombie army, the vampire count army. You had the knights in shining armor with the Bretonnians. You had the kind of Nordic barbarians in chaos. And with AOS, it's kind of, you have the shiny golden marines, you have the buff chaos corn dudes, you have ghosts, and it's kind of all these like random things that I think probably didn't appeal to that like old-timey fantasy crowd.
And I think with AOS, it just takes a bit of time to become more well established. I think it's just going to be able to grow on people if they want to continue, because I don't think it's going anywhere. Like, I don't think it's going to be eliminated. I don't see AOS like being demolished and coming out with Age of fill in the blank. Age of Nagash. Make it happen.
Yeah. I think we'll have to see when this old world thing they're talking about, the Warhammer Old World, gets kind of more fleshed out and announced. Because that is something where I'm like, they blew up the old world. They said, okay, we're getting rid of the old world. And now they're bringing it back, which to me indicates either AOS, maybe, well, I say A, but it could be that AOS maybe isn't doing as well as GW as we think it is, or they're trying to get to at least have a way to play off of the popularity of like the Total War games, which are all set in Warhammer Fantasy. And if you play Warhammer Fantasy, if you play the Total War games, and you then were like, oh, I want to play the tabletop game this is based off of,
right?
You basically have to be like, well, they blew that world up and replaced it with this that has that is in no way in a relation to the computer game you're playing.
Right. Yeah. So it's good that they have that old world in it. And I think some of the things are coming back. I don't know. It's sort of like if a society is destroyed by chaos, and then it'll slowly eventually start rebuilding itself if the opportunity presents itself. So I think we're going to get some of those armies back, but with new range, new models. I mean, we're getting elves. They're changed because chaos changed them. But we are getting elves. And I think we're going to get, I don't know if the Bone Reapers are supposed to be the Tomb Kings in a different way, mutated somehow, or trying to fill that void, or maybe a different variation of I don't know. I do like the Egyptian aesthetic, though. I have to admit, I really do think it's a cool aesthetic. When I first looked at a Warhammer magazine back when I was younger, I saw the Tomb Kings, and I'm like, well, I don't play this game, but if I did, I love that Egyptian skeletal effect with mummies and stuff like that. It was just a cool line. It's just really cool.
Yeah, and just the whole kind of their lore was cool, just because it's like they were all about trying to live forever, and what happened is they figured it out, but it caused them all to be skeletons, and like it's there's talk of like various countries would go and try to raid their cities because they hear there are riches in these old Tomb King cities, and they would wake up the Tomb Kings, who would then chase them and try to get their stuff back.
Right.
And that's how Nagash was the head necromancer of the Tomb Kings and betrayed them. And I think they either tracked him down and killed him, or he fled and is in hiding. But in the lore, the books of Nagash, if you found a book, you got the power of a god.
Yeah. Because
he had poured all his knowledge in there. He created the vampire counts because,
well, Neferata.
Yeah, and he created all the vampire counts, and they lived in Sylvania, which I get. It was we can't say Transylvania, so let's just come up with a word. Name the country something similar. But just the old world lore was so good, and I think AOS it needs a series. that's I think the big thing is that a lot of their books have been either kind of one-off stories or things that advance the lore, and there's not been a book series where it's like, let's build this world into what the like life is there, how like people live and like the various realms and all that stuff. It's always been kind of, we have Stormcast fighting something or whatever, but it's like, well, what about when there's not a undead invasion?
Right.
Like apparently there's humans that live in Ulgu. Well,
what do they look like?
Like,
yeah,
like, and according like apparently there's like a Sigmar outpost in Shaiish. Well, that's got to have some issues when it's not being attacked by Nagash.
Right.
And, like, give us more like that. That's my one of my big issues that kind of has me not like AOS that much is just I'm like, I want to know more about these worlds you've created, not just have them be kind of, this is the backdrop of this clash of titans.
Right. So there's a trade-off. I would argue that Age of Sigmar is easier to play and get into, and play with other people. The community seems to be a little more forgiving, but there's this big empty vacuum of lore that needs to be filled, and filling up Warhammer Fantasy lore there's some big shoes to fill in that one, because there are a lot of great novels. So writers need to get writing. Now, I do have to say, with AOS lore, I love The Undying King by Josh Reynolds. It really shows some character. If you play Death Faction, if you like Nagash, and you like the Mortarks, there's a conversation between Nagash and Archaon, and then there's Archaon with Neferata really talking it out, and you get to feel a sense of those Mortarks, which really weren't presented in a lot of detail anywhere else. That I highly recommend that book, The Undying King by Josh Reynolds. That was a great book, and Josh Reynolds is a great writer. I really do like, and I'm a fan of his work. So, but yeah, we need more. We need something. It's kind of hard because you did have that Horus Heresy style of novels with Nagash betraying everyone. He was the great betrayer and let chaos come in because he figured if everybody was dead, then there would be order in the universe, because chaos cannot, afflict the undead or change their minds because they're autonomous, and if you have autonomy like that, there is order. There is order and autonomy. There's no individualism. There's no, freak occurrences. There's also no creativeness or beauty or art. Well, there's a beauty in sameness, I guess. So that's his version of order. That's why Death is like, he was part of the Order Pantheon before he broke off and betrayed everyone. They figured, hey, everybody's going to die eventually. So guess what? I won this game already. And I will wait century upon century, about millennia upon millennia. I mean, I'm not going to die. So playing the long game.
Well, I was thinking about, like, with the lore thing, is that AOS does not have the, if you're new to the game, start here. Yeah. Like, I'd say with 40k, you have the Gaunt's Go series or the Eisenhorn series, which are very approachable. If you know nothing about the lore, you will understand these books.
Right.
And Fantasy had that in, like, you have the Gotrek and Felix series, which, if you do not know the lore, this is a very approachable book.
Right.
The problem with AOS is they don't have that. You have to like, if you are reading something like, say, you're the Undying King, you have to know, well, why Nagash is important, why the Mortarks are important, and like why some of these things, like, oh, why is Nagash talking to Sigmar such a big deal? Like, who is this Sigmar guy? Who is this Nagash dude? who are all these? What is all this realm thing? What's this talk about the world that was?
Mm-hmm.
Like, et cetera, et cetera. And I think like they need that like that novel, like a novel series like that, just kind of that people can grab onto and look forward to every new book release, like that grabs people and are like, okay, I can get behind this. That
Yeah. And they do have some information in the core book and the battle tomes, but you're right. They need a novel so you can really sink your teeth into.
yeah, and it needs to be something that's not like this is our Stormcast versus insert X opponent.
It's sort of like that in 40k, where this is our Space Marine versus insert anything.
Well, but with like sometimes with like Stormcat with it's it seems like with AOS is a lot of their books are tied to character model releases,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like the Neve Black Talon book was released, I think, with her model when it came out.
I like that book.
And I'm like, it's like it could be a good book, but it's like you could have made a series out of that.
Oh yeah.
Or something like that, where it's like just, and I won't even necessarily say a Stormcast is the best one to have for a series novel. Like, I would say maybe a Caradron Overlord, just for the fact is you want a character that can get to the various realms and like explore the, like they're not tied to, with Stormcast it's you're either in Azure or you're on the battlefield.
Yeah. Yep. There are some. I think Glim's Forge. I read that one as well, and they were protecting a town which had a secret underneath, which just utter devastation lied in wake. But I'm not going to ruin the story or anything like that. But
is that from Soul Wars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Battle of Glim Forge.
Novel I read.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was cool. It was very personable because they actually named, they were names of people, of these warriors, and then that looming "I am losing my identity" was pretty profound, because who are you if you have no identity? Then what makes you better than the skeletons and the ghosts that you're fighting who are autonomous?
My issue with that is it's kind of with Stormcast is that when I hear about Stormcast stories, I feel there are no stakes. Because in the lore, it is written that when they die, they just go back up to Azure and get reforged.
Right.
Now, in Soul Wars, they talk about getting the souls captured and all that, and I'm like, okay, that's, I guess, their attempt to add some kind of, like, danger to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I hear about these Stormcasts, I'm like, so if they die, they're just going to come back.
Right.
Why do I care about these characters?
Right.
Like with Marines die.
That's it.
And like that's it. Like they're dead.
Yeah.
Stormcast, it's like, okay, they've thrown themselves and like blocked a shot or like taken a blow or something.
Mm-hmm.
That, yes, that's heroic, but is it really that heroic when you know you'll become reforged and come back?
Right. But if they come back, are they going to be like, look, Vandus Hammerhand? Like, they talked about him in the Soul Wars book, where they said, "Oh, him. Like, he doesn't even know who or what you are. He's just a killing machine now. He was a great hero. He doesn't remember any of his deeds. He just started getting erased and chipped at. Like right now, Vandus Hammerhand, he's pretty much a robot. He's pretty much a Necron at this point."
Yeah, well, I think that it's another where they're like even the models, like just I get kind of, I'm like, I'm kind of fine with that, because if you look at their models, all of their faces are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the Stormcast models are kind of this open mouth, like death mask look. And yeah, it's just it's hard to see this model, like these models having humanity in them, where it's like they just don't have that like with Marines, you get kind of the Stormcast have dishelmeted versions, but like with Marines, I feel like they look a lot more human than the Stormcast do.
So have a Sigmarine helping a kid out in one hand with a bolter on the other side, just shooting at someone else. Have one with a kid.
When one of I think like one of the GW painting methods they talked about, like easy methods to paint your army, was they showed you could paint your Stormcast to look like statues.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is when your army range can be painted as statues, and that looks okay. That I feel that means like there's not a lot of life in your models.
I mean, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so true. And again, that is that struggle. They're becoming autonomous. They're becoming statues. They're losing their humanity and or identity, and that's the biggest struggle that they face. So yeah, so this is hard because I play both though. We were just talking about AOS, what we like and we dislike, and then it's the lore part.
I think we went on a long tangent about Stormcast, and
well, yeah, we went into the Stormcast as well. But just to if there was, so we're doing plus and minuses of AOS. We just did plus and minuses of 40k to recap. And here's the thing: I love playing both, but if you had to choose one. and lo and behold, everyone watching the video, this is just not two people talking. Join in the conversation in the comments as well as in the comments down below. I mean, just, what do you think? Which would you bet? Which would you choose? Which one is better for you and why? I'd love to have that conversation going down below or in the side comments if you're watching it live. That would be awesome. But if you had to choose just one, Mason, which one would it be and why? That's tough. That is super tough. Yeah. I'm thinking about it myself. I came up with the idea. I'm like, well, what answer would I choose for that? And you can't base it on how many models you have. It has to be based on, yes, it has to be based, not how invested you are.
40K all the way.
Yeah. What?
If it's based on that, it'd be 40K all the way.
Right. Or just
if it's based on how many models I have for each one.
Right.
I would still say 40K.
Okay.
And the reason being is I really like the 40K lore. And there are a lot more armies in 40K that I would like to paint than in AOS. There are some armies I'd love to paint into AOS, but there's a lot more in 40K. Also, I feel that 40K will always kind of, I think, ever since getting rid of Warhammer Fantasy, I think 40K will be GW's kind of main squeeze, if you will. So I feel like with 40K, I don't have to worry about possibly the updates taking too long, or there not being a constant like models coming out for various armies or something like that. That there will always be stuff to do. I really like. I find myself, I like the world and the model and just the hobby and modeling opportunities in 40K than I do AOS. It's a very close. If like, it's not to say I don't like AOS. It's really hard. I mean, because I played both and I've painted armies for both. But my issue is that I've played Warhammer Fantasy, and I like that much better than AOS.
Oh, okay.
So So yeah, after all the hemming and high, I would say 40k.
If you had to choose one, it would be 40k. All right, I'm gonna turn the smoking gun towards me.
if for simply, but I like vehicles.
Oh yeah.
In airplanes and all that stuff. So I'm like, yes, I get giant dragons in AOS, but in 40k, I can get giant tanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So Bretonian.
Also, have you seen the Warlord Titan? Does AOS have a Warlord Titan? AOS does not have a Warlord.
Can you get that in plastic, please? That would be absolutely amazing. I'd have 3. I'd have a Warlord Titan detachment. Hey, are you starting?
You play Adeptus Titanicus on a real scale.
No. Are you starting your 40k army? Oh, what do you have? A start collecting Vanguard set? Okay, I'm going to bring my 3 Warlord Titans. It's fine. You just have to shoot it. No, never that. Never that.
Also, it's 6,000 points.
Yeah, right?
No, it's not 6,000 points. Because Warlord Titan's 6,000 points, so it's 18,000 points.
Yeah, let's play Apocalypse. Oh, gosh. All right, let me see. Oof. Vehicles are definitely a plus. The lore is definitely a plus for Space Wolves and how cool he is. Although Russ and all them, they're kind of jerks in every other book except for the Space Wolf books, which he was like Grimnar is one of the chillest peoples ever. And then in every other book, when it comes to the Space Wolves, like if you go in any other book, it's just like kill, the end, you know. But it's not right. What about depth? Have you thought? No, kill. That's it. End story. You know, like, well, no, there's so much more depth to them than that. But that being said, that's a whole different tangent where we're not going to get into. As far as so hard. Gameplay, I would like AOS more. Lore-wise, I like 40k more. And I'm going to come to a conclusion in this. I'm just weighing the options here. Community, so far, excluding my current gaming group, which are absolutely awesome people, I would say I've had more fun with AOS with the people that I've played randomly if I went to a gaming store than I would ever had with 40k in my experience. I wish 40k had Nagash or something that's not Necron, but Nagash-like. That would be awesome. But then again, they'd have to bring in Sigmar, and that would be like really confusing. But no, I'm not going to do that. But still, endless spells are freaking awesome. Wish they had that for 40k. So that's definitely a plus on AOS as well. I have been painting more Space Wolf stuff than I have ever painted AOS stuff, period. Exclamation point. And it has been my love, and I learned how to paint better on Space Wolves, and so there's an attachment to them. So, so many pros and cons in here. And yes, I definitely, we're simpatico on this one. It is a very tough choice for me. It really is, because I am so invested in 40k. But if I had to choose one, I'm going AOS. I'm going AOS because of the devastating crushing that I've gotten while playing 40k. Turned me off to 40k so much. Like, I felt so defeated, and I kept on feeling defeated every time I took these, I don't know how many hundreds of hours painting Space Wolves and trying my best and learning new techniques and trying that out, bringing them up onto the table to run against a Tau unpainted army incursion force that would just blow me off the table, or even a guard with like 3 Bane blades in my face with my space claws, my blood claws just going, hey, hi, goodbye. Like that entire experience of playing the game was so devastating to me getting into it. Now, here's the thing, Mason, our opinions are not permanent. Things could happen in AOS that turns you over to that side, and things could happen in 40k, which are happening actually, because I'm in a transition period with my gaming group that might lead me back to 40k side if I had to decide one. But currently, I'm loving how easy it was for me to play that game of AOS that we just had a battle report from, and I wasn't feeling like my brain hurt. I was tired towards the end of it, I have to admit, not as tired as you, but I was tired towards the end of it, I have to say. But when it comes to 40k, I'm exhausted. Like I just want to sleep, and I have a headache by the end of it. So
I'm not that way with 40k, and I honestly like. I've talked to my friend about this because he also loves AOS. And I think for me, my thing with AOS is I do not like the army I chose. That I liked Stormcast initially, but there are other factions I wish I had done instead.
I mean, it's not too late.
So I like kind of why I talked about wanting to do KO, just because I like the models more. Also, it doesn't suffer from poster boy syndrome, which is I've come to realize is a big problem with some armies, where you have constant releases that you feel like you have to get.
It's so true. It's so true, because now you just put that in perspective. Yeah, Stormcast Eternals, every time they open up a new chamber, I am clamoring at the bits to get, and I don't even have a large force painted, but I have plenty of boxes of AOS stuff, and of Stormcast Eternal stuff, and I don't even know if I can use them. Like I was like, well, can I use? Like I didn't know about the troop choices. That if you have the general, it's going to affect the troop choices. I do have the battle tome. My bad for not reading the battle tome. But again, I just go with my heart, and I'm a pretty passionate person. So I don't know. Do I expand the Stormcast Eternals, or do I just head deep into Legions in Nagash? That's where I'm at.
Because I just with my Stormcast, even though I've painted so much, there are just so many units I still don't have, and I'm just like, I want to. I like my. That's why I love my Eldar army, where I'm like, I can collect an amount of it and just say, okay, I'm done, and not feel like, okay, here's a new release that's come out every year. You got to add that onto it. Got that add onto it. Also, I just love dwarf airships. So.
Oh man. Okay, so Mason is selling off his Stormcast Eternal army for $15,000. It's fully painted. Is that about right?
I'm not selling it. I don't know if it's worth. If someone will give me $15,000 for it, yes, I'll sell it.
There you go.
Because that's worth way more than probably what the paint job is.
No, I saw your models, and you will see it on. Well, if you've checked the battle report for AOS, you can see what they look like. They're good-looking models. Mason does not give himself enough credit. I think they're an amazing army. I felt honored to play against an army that was fully painted and well painted as that Stormcast Eternal army. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rob, for my ego boost.
I'm just speaking the truth. I don't candy coat things.
Rob. But I probably wouldn't do a new AOS army until I do my Warriors of Chaos army.
Oh yeah.
for fantasy because I have
Slaves of Darkness, you're saying?
Well, no, it's going to be Warriors of Chaos. They would be called Slaves to Darkness in AOS, but I'm going them up for fantasy, so square bases, and I just have a lot of them that I need to paint those before I even consider doing a second AOS army.
Yeah, I have Archeon and the Slaves of Darkness Start Collecting box that I picked up there. I was thinking about getting the Vanguard as well, but like, see, here's the thing with me. I will have boxes behind me, and I won't touch them for years and years and years. Eventually, I'll get to them, and when I get to them, I'm working my speed painting muscle that I can paint to a higher quality, but knocking them out like not quite 24-hour like Vince's does, but if I keep working my speed painting muscle to a high and pushing myself to a higher quality, then I would be able to finish those boxes behind me eventually. You know, if I mull over the details too long and not work my speed painting muscles, I'll never paint those boxes. Just never will to get to them, which seems like a travesty to me. So, again, what do you guys think? AOS 40k? Why? Why not? I'd love to have the community response and get the community active into that. Ooh, ooh. Oop, oop. All right, well, I guess we can call it a show. I don't know, what do you want to call it? A tryst. No, a show.
A gentlemanly discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And whenever I have a discussion, I always try to look at both sides. I'm not single sided, one-sided. I'm very dimensional. And I'm always open to, pros and cons and then coming up with my decision at the end. It's called making an informed decision. Right? Fun. I still love 40k. And I'm still
love AOS.
It's just, if I had to choose one right now in this point in my life, that's where we land at. Oh.
And also, just a side thing is, I feel like what you like, what game for at least for me, what game I like depends on what is being played around me.
Right. Yeah, we didn't even cover that.
And that, I feel like that's a big thing where you talk about like how like your experience with 40k was bad because of the community.
Yeah.
But good for the AOS community.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who are like, they'll have the good experience with the 40k community. It may be a bad experience with the AOS community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that doesn't necessarily mean one game's better than the other. That all games are good. It just depends on what you're having good experiences with, where you are.
Right. Like Warhammer Underworlds, I would have an opinion about it, but nobody plays it in my area. Very few people do if they fight it. I don't know them. If you're in the area, I'd like to play some Warhammer Underworlds.
But that's what I like. That you can like a game, but if no one plays it, then that affects your opinion of the game. Where you're like, I've painted all this stuff up, but no one plays with me.
Right. What's the point?
Yeah.
Right. So go to your local hobby community, see what's actively playing, watch a couple of games before you get into it. If you're a new starting player, see if you like the scene, if you like what is going on, and then, possibly join an escalation league where you're just playing your smaller force and you get to play with them.
I don't like escalation leagues.
Why is that?
And this is mostly because I feel like escalation leagues put undue pressure on a person as a painter to finish stuff in a certain amount of time.
Right.
And for me as a painter, I don't want to be told by anyone else what I need to paint other than myself.
Right.
And I've never competed in an escalation league, mostly because by the time they're announced, that I am not in position to do a new army. I'm like, I either have stuff I needed to do for the army I'm currently doing, or I've started a new project. And so I'm like, I'm not going to interrupt those current projects to do this escalation league, where in some cases the amount they're escalating is just not a conceivable time for me to get the stuff built and painted and table ready by the time that happens.
So KO Army, starting January, 1 unit per month.
I could do that.
There you go.
But some of them are like, it's every 2 weeks, and it's like we jump by, if it's 40K, like 250 points. And what you have to paint, depending on what army you're doing, that is like, if you're doing Skaven, that's maybe 30 dudes. But if you're doing say Stormcast, that may be 5 dudes or 1 monster or what have you.
Right.
And that's kind of my issue with escalation leagues, is that I think it's good in theory. It's like it's a good way to get people in the hobby in theory, but it's just designed to, it will leave people behind depending on what army they're doing.
Right. So like tailor it to something that is manageable for your group. Have a smaller, there goes back to the smaller gaming group, where, you know, find a couple of girls or guys and that have the same kind of interest, the same kind of like, if you are into competitive, find the competitive group of people that you play these absolute crushing competitive games with. If you like more of a casual setting that occasionally goes competitive, you can do that as well. But find yourself a group of people, and the best thing to do is go to your local hobby store and peruse and hang out for a little while and get to know the people, B, their play style, and then, you know, say, hey, I'm kind of interested in this aesthetic, what do you think? You know, start conversations. And
my thing is know the people and take note of how often they show up regularly.
Oh yeah,
that's for me, I think the big thing is that, like, with the reason I got into our group was that they showed up at the store every Saturday. And I was at the store every Saturday, and we just got to talking. There are some people where they will show up, you will play them one day, you will not see them for 3 months.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against them, but those kind of people make it very hard to do like an escalation league
campaign,
or kind of campaign thing, because with those things, you need people who are willing to show up regularly.
Yep.
And if they aren't going to do it, it's going to slowly fall apart.
Yep. Absolutely. Consistency. Like at anything, consistency is key with that as well. So a lot of things to consider here. And what you want to play, and if you're a new player in this hobby, hopefully we shed some light, pros and cons in either way, and where you want to start your hobby journey into this magnificent hobby and game of ours. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think this is a wrap. We're going to go film our 40k battle report this week. All right. Well, if you like this skull session, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush.